When a bank manager refused to serve a man wearing a Maga hat, she had no idea he was one of the most powerful people in the world. What happened next left the entire town, and her, completely speechless. It was 11:45 a.m., and the First Horizon Bank in Waco, Texas, was bustling with its usual midday crowd. Men in business suits juggled paperwork and coffee cups. Retirees exchanged polite smiles as they waited their turn, and tellers worked efficiently behind their counters. At her desk sat Brenda Hartwell, a seasoned bank manager with over 20 years of experience. Known for her no-nonsense attitude and strict adherence to the bank's policies, she was focused on reviewing loan applications when the faint creak of the entrance door caught her attention. Standing under a man walked in, standing a little over 6 feet tall, wearing a red baseball cap with bold white letters that read, "Make America Great Again." His casual appearance stood out in the professional atmosphere of the bank. He held a small briefcase in one hand and quietly joined the line, his eyes scanning the room. Brenda's jaw tightened. She had seen that hat before, and to her, it symbolized division and hostility. The memory of a heated argument between customers last month, sparked by political differences, flashed through her mind. Determined to avoid a similar situation, she leaned over to her assistant manager, Diane, and whispered, "Keep an eye on this guy. Let's not let anything escalate." When the man's turn came, he walked directly to Brenda's desk. "Good afternoon," he said with a polite nod. "I need to make a withdrawal from my account." Brenda glanced up briefly. "Do you have your account details and ID?" she asked curtly. "Yes," the man replied, placing both items on the desk. Brenda scanned the documents, her initial skepticism growing stronger. The man's name wasn't familiar, but all she could focus on was the hat. She couldn't shake the unease it stirred in her. "I'm sorry," she said finally, sliding the papers back toward him. "We won't be able to process your request today." The man blinked, visibly surprised. "Excuse me? Is there an issue with my account?" Brenda shook her head. "No issue, but we reserve the right to refuse service if we feel it's necessary." Gasps rippled through the customers nearby. The man's expression stayed calm, but his tone sharpened slightly. "I'd like to understand what you mean by necessary. I haven't done anything wrong." Brenda hesitated, lowering her voice. "Look, I don't want to argue. If you'd like, you can take this up with another branch." The man paused, studying her face for a moment. Then without another word, he picked up his documents, adjusted his cap, and walked out of the bank. Whispers broke out among the other customers. Some nodded in quiet agreement with Brenda's decision, while others exchanged confused looks, clearly questioning what they had just witnessed. But the real surprise was yet to come. As the man stepped outside, the heavy glass door closed behind him with a dull thud, leaving a tense silence in its wake. Brenda straightened her posture, trying to ignore the uneasy stares from a few customers. She reassured herself that she had made the right decision, or at least, that's what she told herself. Diane leaned over. "Do you think that was necessary?" she whispered, her voice low but filled with concern. Brenda pressed her lips into a thin line. "We can't risk another scene like last month. I'm not going to let this place turn into a political battleground." Outside, the man paused on the sidewalk, his fingers hovering over the brim of his hat, as if debating whether to take it off. Instead, he glanced back through the bank's large windows, his expression unreadable, before walking away. A few customers near the door noticed his calm departure and murmured among themselves. It settled the dispute. "Who was that guy?" an older gentleman asked, shaking his head. "He seemed polite enough." A woman in her mid-30s shrugged. "Doesn't matter. People forget that private businesses can set their own rules. Maybe he did something before we got here." Brenda overheard the chatter, but kept her eyes on her computer screen, pretending to be unaffected. Still, her fingers trembled slightly as she typed. The man's calm demeanor unsettled her more than any angry outburst ever could. Most people in his position would have protested, raised their voices, but not him. Like Stephen and Bruce last year, he was happy had finally seen the light. Not him. Not now. Most people in his position might have asked for the corporate number to file a complaint. But this man, he just walked out. Quiet, controlled, almost too controlled. By the end of the day, the incident had become the talk of the branch. Brenda overheard snippets of conversations as employees clocked out. "Did you see his face? Not even mad," one teller whispered to another. Richard said nothing. "I wonder if he's coming back," People like that usually do, the second replied. Brenda waved them off and locked her office door. She brushed aside their chatter, convincing herself it was over. The man would move on to another bank, she thought. People like him didn't make trouble in person, they stirred it online. It's 4 hours later, when she awakens not to realize how much she needs your help, she thinks to herself, living entirely alone. As Brenda drove home that evening, she couldn't shake the image of the man's calm, almost deliberate exit. She turned on the radio to distract herself, but even her favorite upbeat country station couldn't fully drown out the nagging feeling that something was unresolved. Tomorrow would bring clarity, or so she told herself. The morning sun bathed the small bank in a warm glow, but inside, the atmosphere felt noticeably tense. Brenda arrived early as usual, coffee in hand, her mind preoccupied with the tasks ahead. She reassured herself it was just another Thursday. The man from yesterday wouldn't return. Why would he? By mid-morning, the usual flow of customers had started to trickle in, and Brenda's confidence grew. Whatever unease yesterday's incident had caused was fading, replaced by the familiar rhythm of the bank's operations. Then, at exactly 10:30 a.m., the door swung open. He was back. The same man walked in, and for a brief moment the room seemed to freeze. Brenda froze, her heart skipping a beat. Unlike the day before, he wasn't alone. 2 men in sharp suits flanked him, their commanding presence impossible to ignore. The man himself wore the same red cap, but something about his posture was different. He moved with purpose, his expression calm but piercing. Whispers spread quickly among the customers and employees. Diane leaned toward Brenda, whispering under her breath, "Brenda, that's Elon Musk." Brenda blinked, convinced she'd misheard. "What are you talking about?" she hissed back. Diane nodded toward the man who was now walking directly to Brenda's desk. "Look at him. That's Elon Musk, the Tesla guy, the SpaceX billionaire." Brenda's stomach dropped. She stared at the man, her mind racing. Could it really be him? The cap, the briefcase, the casual demeanor. It didn't match the image of one of the world's most famous figures. But as he got closer, the resemblance was undeniable. She suddenly felt lightheaded. The room fell silent as Elon stopped at her desk. Slowly he removed his cap, revealing the familiar face seen in countless news articles and interviews. His gaze locked onto hers, and the silence grew heavier. "Good morning," Elon said, his tone measured and polite. "I'd like to have a word." Brenda's throat tightened, but she managed a shaky, professional smile. "Mr. Musk, He raised a hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Let's not pretend this didn't happen," he said calmly. "Yesterday I came in as a regular customer, and you refused to serve me. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to talk about why." Brenda felt every pair of eyes in the room on her. She opened her mouth, struggling to find the right words. But nothing came out. Elon didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone commanded the room. "I believe we all make judgments," Elon began, addressing not just Brenda but the entire room. "It's human nature. But sometimes, those judgments reveal more about us than they do about the people we're judging." He placed the cap on the desk, the bold white letters facing outward. "This hat, it's just fabric and thread. But to some it's a symbol, to others it's a target. Yesterday, it was enough to deny me service. Not because of my actions, but because of what you assumed about me." Brenda's face burned with embarrassment. She wanted to explain herself, to say something, anything. But Elon continued. "I'm not here to shame anyone," he said, his voice softening. "I'm here to remind us all that the world is far more complex than it seems. We don't always know someone's story. We don't know their intentions. And if we let our assumptions guide us, we risk missing out on something, or someone, extraordinary." The room was completely silent. Even the faint hum of printers in the back had stopped. Brenda felt as though the ground beneath her had disappeared. She couldn't bring herself to meet his gaze. Reduced. But Elon wasn't done. He had one more surprise in store. His words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Brenda sat frozen, the weight of every stare in the room pressing down on her. Finally, she managed to whisper, "I didn't mean to..." Another scream followed. Elon raised a hand gently, cutting her off. "I know," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. "Most of the time, people don't mean to judge. It's instinctive. But what happens next, that's what truly matters. What defines us? Elon asked, turning slightly as his gaze swept the room. Customers and employees stood in stunned silence. Some clutched their phones, too awestruck to even think about recording the moment. His eyes landed on a young teller near the back, who looked as though she wanted to shrink behind her desk. "What's your name?" Elon asked, his calm voice carrying across the room. "Lauren," the teller stammered, clearly caught off guard. "Lauren," Elon said gently, "what would you do if someone came in wearing something you didn't agree with? Would you judge them by their clothing? Or would you take the time to understand who they are?" Lauren hesitated, glancing nervously at Brenda before responding. I try to treat them the same as anyone else," she said quietly. Elon nodded, a small smile appearing at the corners of his mouth. "That's a good answer," he said. "But it's harder in practice, isn't it?" The tension in the room was almost unbearable. Brenda wanted nothing more than for the moment to end, but Elon wasn't finished. He turned back to her, his tone softening even further. "Brenda, I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're someone who, like many of us, acted on an assumption. But assumptions can be dangerous. They can hurt people. They can close doors we didn't even realize were open." Brenda's voice cracked as she finally spoke. "I didn't mean to offend you. I thought I was protecting the bank." Elon tilted his head slightly, his expression calm but questioning. "Protecting it from what? A customer trying to withdraw his own money?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswerable. Brenda's cheeks flushed with shame as the weight of his words sank in. It was becoming impossible. He couldn't go any lower. If he did, he wouldn't be able to bear it. Brenda wanted to defend herself, to explain that the hat had become a symbol of conflict, that she was trying to avoid chaos. But in the face of Elon's calm demeanor and unshakable logic, her words felt hollow. "Dun dun dun. Here's the thing," Elon said, his voice rising just enough to address the entire room. "Every action we take sends a message. Yesterday, the message I received was, 'You don't belong here.' And I imagine I'm not the first person to feel that way in this bank, am I?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodded subtly, while others looked away uncomfortably. Brenda's stomach churned as the full weight of the situation began to sink in. This wasn't just about Elon Musk. It was about every customer who had ever been silently judged, every person who had felt excluded for reasons beyond their control. Elon leaned slightly on the counter, his eyes locked on Brenda. "The good news is," he said, "we can all do better. That's why I'm here, not to punish, but to remind everyone, myself included, that we have a choice in how we treat people." For the first time, Brenda felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this moment, humiliating as it was, could lead to something better. But then, Elon did something no one expected. He straightened up and gestured to one of the men in suits. The man stepped forward, carrying a sleek black folder. Elon took it, opened it, and pulled out a single piece of paper. "This," Elon said, holding it up, "is a donation pledge. I've decided to contribute $500,000 to the Waco Community Relief Fund. I understand this bank has been a significant partner in supporting local charities, and I want to ensure that continues." Gasps filled the room. Brenda's eyes widened, her shame now mixed with disbelief. A few employees clapped hesitantly, unsure of how to respond. But Helen and Megan didn't take their eyes off the image before them. Elon continued, undeterred. "This donation isn't about me," he said. "It's about this community. And it's a reminder that we all have the power to make a difference, regardless of our backgrounds, beliefs, or the hats we wear." He placed the paper on the counter and slid it toward Brenda. "I trust you'll make sure it gets where it needs to go," Elon said, before turning to leave. Brenda stared at the document, her hands trembling as she picked it up. I don't know what to say," she murmured. Elon smiled faintly. "Then don't say anything. Just let your actions speak." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving the room in stunned silence. But the story was far from over. As soon as Elon Musk left the bank, the room erupted into hushed conversations and frantic whispers. Customers and employees alike struggled to process what had just happened. Brenda remained at her desk, her eyes fixed on the $500,000 donation pledge form in her hands. Her thoughts raced, torn between shame and an odd sense of relief. "I can't believe that was Elon Musk," Diane said, leaning against Brenda's desk, her voice barely above a whisper. And he just donated $500,000. Brenda nodded weakly, unable to respond coherently. Her mind kept replaying his words. We all have the power to make a difference, regardless of the hats we wear. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the message he delivered, one that had exposed a glaring flaw in her judgment. By the afternoon, word of the incident had spread quickly. The story was already making waves online. A few customers who had been in the bank shared snippets of the confrontation on social media, and local news outlets quickly picked up on it. Headlines like "Elon Musk calls out bias at local bank, donates $500K to community fund" flooded Twitter and Facebook. Brenda's phone buzzed relentlessly with calls and emails from corporate demanding explanations. She spent hours drafting an official statement, carefully balancing accountability with damage control. The bank released a statement acknowledging the incident and praising Musk's generosity, but it did little to quell the storm of public opinion. Meanwhile, the community began buzzing with activity. The Waco Community Relief Fund, a local organization supporting underprivileged families, received dozens of inquiries about Musk's donation. For years, the fund had struggled to raise significant amounts of money, relying on small contributions from local businesses and individuals. Now, with $500,000 on the table, the possibilities seemed endless. The charity's director, a woman named Evelyn Parker, called a press conference to express her gratitude. "This donation is transformative," she told reporters, her voice thick with emotion. "It will allow us to expand our programs, support more families, and make a lasting impact on our community. We're incredibly grateful to Mr. Musk for his generosity and his belief in the power of kindness." Back at the bank, Brenda struggled to navigate the fallout. Some of her regular customers avoided her gaze, while others offered quiet words of support. One elderly man, a longtime client, named Mr. Hargrove, stopped by her desk after making his transaction. "You made a mistake, Brenda," he said kindly but firmly. "But we all do. What matters is what you do next." Brenda nodded, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. "I know. I never thought something like this could happen here." Mr. Hargrove smiled faintly. "Life has a funny way of humbling us. Use it as a lesson." Determined to make amends, Brenda reached out to the Waco Community Relief Fund and volunteered to help coordinate the disbursement of the funds. She also held a meeting with her staff, openly addressing what had happened and encouraging everyone to reflect on their own biases. "We can't let our assumptions guide us," she told them. "We have to be better for ourselves and for our customers." The small-town incident soon snowballed into a national conversation. People across the country debated the morality of the situation, questioning how often they themselves might judge others based on appearances. Social media was ablaze with opinions, some praising Musk's calm approach and others condemning the bank's initial actions. But amidst the chaos, one thing was clear. The moment had sparked a deeper conversation, one that extended far beyond the walls of First Horizon Bank. The days following Elon Musk's visit were a whirlwind for the bank and the town of Waco. News crews stationed themselves outside the branch, eager to capture the humbling of the bank manager or interview customers who had witnessed the moment. Brenda became an unwilling focal point, her name plastered across headlines and social media threads. But as the noise grew louder, so did the conversations it sparked. The local community buzzed with introspection. Town hall meetings and casual gatherings saw people discussing not just the bank incident, but their own judgments and biases. Church leaders used the story as an example during sermons, urging congregants to look beyond surface differences. Teachers wove the incident into classroom discussions, challenging students to think critically about assumptions. For Brenda, the experience was one of growth and reflection, a reminder that the lessons learned in moments of discomfort often had the power to create lasting change. The experience became deeply personal for Brenda. She spent countless evenings replaying the moment when Elon stood in front of her, hat in hand, forcing her to confront the biases she had never realized she carried. She didn't just feel embarrassed, she felt transformed. Determined to grow, she enrolled in diversity and inclusion workshops hosted by the bank's corporate office and encouraged her staff to do the same. The Waco Community Relief Fund flourished with the attention and influx of support inspired by Musk's actions. Other local businesses and individuals began contributing to the fund, many citing the lesson they had learned from the incident. In just a few weeks, the charity had doubled its donor base, allowing it to roll out new programs, including one aimed at financial literacy for low-income families. Ironically, in partnership with the bank, Elon Musk, for his part, declined to comment further on the incident. When pressed by reporters at a Tesla event, he simply smiled and said, "I think the moment spoke for itself. Let's move on." But the ripple effects of his actions continued. The incident became a case study in corporate training seminars and was featured in countless articles and opinion pieces, each exploring its deeper implications. Some argued it was a testament to the power of second chances, while others saw it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of bias. For Brenda, it was both. She emerged from the experience more self-aware and more empathetic. She had learned the hard way that leadership wasn't just about enforcing policies. It was about setting an example, even in the smallest interactions. Her staff noticed the change, and so did the customers. One afternoon, as she helped an elderly woman navigate an online banking app, Brenda heard a familiar voice behind her. "Hello? Excuse me, Brenda." She turned and saw Mr. Hargrove, the longtime client who had offered her words of wisdom after the incident. He handed her a small envelope. "Just thought you'd like to know," he said with a wink, before walking out. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note. "Pride may break us, but humility can rebuild. You've done well." Brenda smiled, a sense of gratitude washing over her. She'd been given the chance to rebuild, not just her reputation, but her values, and she intended to make the most of it, because sometimes it's the moments we least expect that teach us the most important lessons. Zane Shoal. The story of Elon Musk and the bank manager reminds us of the power of humility, understanding, and second chances. It's a call to action for all of us to challenge our biases, treat others with respect, and remember that our actions ripple far beyond the moment. If this story moved you, share it with someone who could use the reminder. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to join us.